I'm 33 years old, and until recently, I was engaged to Fidilia, a woman I once thought I'd spend my life with. We met about 6 years ago at a barbecue hosted by mutual friends. She had a bright smile, a sharp sense of humor, and we hit it off right away. A year ago, I proposed. It felt like the right time and the right person. I believed I was not just marrying Fidilia but also becoming part of her family. Her parents, Leonard and Beatatrix, are the kind of people who enjoy being the center of attention. They're loud, opinionated, and always have something to say about everything. At first, I thought it was just how they were. But over time, I began to see how their sense of entitlement showed up in nearly everything they did. Before I get into what happened, I need to talk about my mom. Patricia was the best person I've ever known. She passed away 2 years ago after battling cancer for 3 years. It was humbling to watch her fight the illness while still putting others first. She taught me about kindness, generosity, and standing up for what's right. She wasn't just my anchor, she supported so many people. She had a way of helping others without making them feel ashamed or like they owed her something. She simply did what needed to be done. That included helping Fidilia's family. Leonard and Beatatrix owe her more than they acknowledge. But if you listen to them talk about her now, you'd never know. When I introduced Fidilia to my mom, things seemed fine. My mom liked her and told me so. Fidilia came off as warm and respectful. But once things became more serious, I noticed tension. It wasn't dramatic, just little comments. Like when Fidilia said my mom was too involved, or a bit much. It bothered me, but I figured it was just nerves or her adjusting to being part of a new family. The truth is, my mom went above and beyond for Fidilia's family. Years ago, when their restaurant was about to close, my mom co-signed a loan to help them. No one else would take that risk, but she believed in them. She even helped them sort out their finances and create a plan to get the business back on track. And it worked. The restaurant stayed open, and they kept their livelihood. It didn't stop there. When their commercial oven broke down and they couldn't afford a new one, she paid for it so they wouldn't lose customers. She never asked to be repaid, even though that money could have helped cover her own medical bills. That's just the kind of person she was. Then there was Fidilia's older brother, Ryan. He was struggling to finish college because he couldn't afford his last semester. My mom paid for it so he wouldn't have to drop out. She told him, "Education is something no one can take from you." She didn't just give money, she gave her time. She spent hours helping their family with everything from bookkeeping advice to babysitting Ryan's kids so he could study. But here's the thing. Leonard, Beatatrix, and Ryan never truly thanked her. Sure, they said, "Thanks," in passing, but it was never sincere. My mom didn't mind. She didn't do it for praise. She simply wanted to help. Her sudden death devastated me. She was my whole world, and losing her felt like losing part of myself. At the time, I thought Fidilia was there for me. But looking back, most of what she did was the bare minimum. She'd say things like, "You need to move on," or, "Your mom wouldn't want you stuck in grief." Maybe that was true, but it didn't feel comforting, it felt cold. As the wedding approached, more red flags popped up. Fidilia acted irritated any time I mentioned my mom during wedding planning. I wanted to include a short tribute to my mom before the vows, but Fidilia shot it down, saying, "Won't that just make people sad? Weddings are supposed to be happy." I let it go to avoid an argument, but these little dismissals added up. Leonard and Beatatrix didn't help. They made snide comments like marrying me was a downgrade. Leonard joked that Fidilia was moving up by marrying outside her class. Beatatrix would say, "We all make sacrifices for love," as if she were doing me a favor. It hurt, but I stayed quiet for Fidilia's sake. I kept thinking things would get better after the wedding. I couldn't have been more wrong. About a month before the wedding, everything started falling apart. Leonard and Beatatrix offered to host the rehearsal dinner at a high-end restaurant they had connections with. I thought it was a nice gesture. I hoped they were finally trying to make peace and show some class. I even told myself this was them making an effort. But here's the context. They didn't just offer to host it. They constantly reminded everyone about it. Beatatrix would say, "We've worked so hard to make this dinner perfect. It'll be the talk of the town." Leonard kept bragging about how exclusive the restaurant was and how lucky we were to get a reservation. It started to feel less like a kind gesture and more like a way for them to show off. Still, I focused on the wedding and let them handle the rehearsal dinner. That was a mistake. As the dinner got closer, their behavior worsened. Every conversation turned into a subtle insult. When I asked about the guest list, Beatatrix rolled her eyes and said, "Don't stress, Michael. Just show up and enjoy yourself." It rubbed me the wrong way. This was supposed to be our event. Shouldn't Fidilia and I have a say? Then came the menu. Beatatrix made a big deal about how fancy the food would be, saying things like, "The chef's putting together something really special, nothing like what you're used to back home." She loved that phrase, back home. It was her go-to dig, a reminder that I wasn't from their world. I grew up in a working-class town, and they never let me forget it. I tried to let it slide, reminding myself it was just one night. Smile, nod, and get through it. But even Fidilia started changing. She always took her parents' side, but it got worse. Anytime I raised a concern, she'd dismiss it with, "You're overthinking. My parents know what they're doing." It wasn't just about the dinner. It was the way they made me feel, like I didn't belong. Like I was an outsider in my own relationship. Like I should be thankful that Fidilia chose me. And Fidilia? She never defended me. If anything, she encouraged it by laughing along or ignoring me. A week before the dinner, something happened that should have been a clear warning. Fidilia and I were at her parents' place going over wedding plans. Beatatrix was in full control, flipping through seating charts and flower samples like she was planning a royal gala. I suggested changing the centerpieces to something simpler, something my mom would have liked. Beatatrix didn't even look up. She just said, "Oh, Patricia had interesting taste. But this is Fidelia's day. Let's keep things modern." I froze. It was a small jab, but it cut deep. Fidilia didn't say a word. She just kept scrolling on her phone, like nothing had happened. I wanted to confront Beatrix right then and there, but I didn't want to start a fight. So, I swallowed my pride and stayed quiet. Looking back, I regret that choice. Every insult, every slight from her just kept stacking up. Still, I ignored it all, telling myself I was keeping the peace. The rehearsal dinner finally arrived, and I could feel the tension in the air. Fidilia and I drove to the restaurant together. I tried making small talk, hoping to lighten the mood, but she stayed quiet, scrolling through her phone. When I asked if she was excited, she just shrugged and said, "It's just a dinner, Michael. Don't stress. Just dinner, right?" When we got there, Leonard and Beatrix were already at the entrance, acting like they owned the place. Leonard stood by the door, shaking hands like he was hosting a business gala. Beatrix, meanwhile, was barking instructions at the restaurant staff. It felt more like a corporate event than a family gathering. The venue was extravagant, white linen tables, chandeliers, the works. The kind of place that screamed, "Look how important we are." And honestly, it only made me feel more like an outsider. As guests started arriving, I noticed something odd. Almost everyone there was from Fidelia's side of the family. My side? Just my dad, my sister, and a couple of close friends. The rest were her parents' colleagues and business partners. It felt like Leonard and Beatrix had hijacked the dinner and turned it into their own networking event. I pulled Fidilia aside. "Why aren't more of my family here?" She gave me an annoyed look. "Michael, your family is small. My parents had to fill the room somehow. It's not a big deal." That was always her answer, "Not a big deal." I bit my tongue and tried to carry on, but I couldn't shake the feeling that this night wasn't about us. It was about Leonard and Beatrix showing off. Then came the speeches. Leonard was first. He took the microphone like he was at a shareholders meeting, not his daughter's rehearsal dinner. "Tonight is about celebrating the union of two families, our Fidilia, and of course, Michael." He said my name like it tasted bad. I sat there, trying to keep my cool, but every sentence was a jab. He went on about how proud he was of Fidilia, how she had always been a star and knew exactly what she wanted in life. Then, with a smug little smirk, he added, "And now she's marrying someone who'll help her stay grounded." A few people chuckled. I just stared at him, wondering if I'd heard right. He continued, telling a story about how driven Fidilia was as a child and how fortunate she was to have their leadership. Then he said, "We always told Fidilia to aim high. And while Michael might not be what we envisioned at first," he let the sentence trail off. People laughed again. I could feel my father and sister glaring from across the table. Beatrix was up next. She strutted to the microphone like she was accepting a Lifetime Achievement Award. She started sweet, talking about how much she loved Fidilia, but soon the digs at me began. "Fidilia's always been so patient," she said, "and she's already taught Michael so much." I nearly choked on my water. Then she turned to me and smiled. "We're so happy to welcome you to the family, Michael. It'll be nice to have someone who doesn't mind getting their hands dirty." Laughter followed. I looked at Fidilia, expecting her to at least look uncomfortable, but she was smiling, laughing right along with them. Just when I thought it couldn't get worse, Leonard returned to the mic. "There's one more person we should acknowledge," he said. "Michael's mom, Patricia." For a brief second, I thought he might say something kind. But no, Patricia was one of a kind. Always had a habit of inserting herself into things. Always had opinions about how things should be done. Beatrix chimed in. "Oh, definitely. Remember how she used to insist on helping even when we didn't ask?" They were laughing. About my mother. As if she were some nosy neighbor, not the woman who had supported their family. Leonard continued, "In all seriousness, Patricia was generous. Helped us out a lot, sometimes too much." He winked. The room was silent, but Leonard didn't seem to care. "Let's keep her spirit alive at the wedding. Hopefully Michael doesn't inherit her enthusiasm for taking charge. Wouldn't want him meddling, right?" That was it. My face burned. My fists were clenched under the table. I looked at Fidilia, begging her with my eyes to say something. Anything. She just laughed and said, "Oh, Dad. Stop. Stop." They were mocking my mom in front of everyone, and that was her response? Then Beatrix walked up to our table and, in the sweetest voice, said, "Michael, I hope you weren't offended. We just wanted to add a little humor. It's all in good fun." Something inside me snapped. I stood up. My chair scraped loudly across the floor. "Are you serious right now?" I asked, my voice low but shaking with rage. The room went silent. I looked straight at Beatrix. "You spent the whole night taking cheap shots at my mom. The woman who helped your family when no one else would. And now you're acting like it's just a joke?" Leonard tried to brush it off. "Relax, Michael. You're overreacting." "Overreacting?" I said, louder. "You called her meddling. You mocked her generosity. How is that funny?" My dad looked like he wanted to punch Leonard. My sister had her arms crossed, eyes locked on Beatrix like she was ready to jump in. Beatrix gave a nervous laugh. "Everyone knows how Patricia liked to take charge. She helped you," I shouted. "She saved your business, paid for your oven repair, your patio remodel, even your son's college tuition. And this is how you repay her?" Leonard stood up, trying to regain control. "That's enough. If you're going to throw a tantrum, maybe you're not ready for marriage." Fidilia tugged on my sleeve. "Michael, can we talk outside?" I pulled my arm away. "No, Fidilia. Not until your parents understand how disrespectful they've been." "I didn't know they were going to say all that," she said. "But you laughed," I shot back. "You laughed at every single insult." The room was buzzing now, people whispering, heads turning. But I didn't care. This wasn't about them. It was about standing up for my mom. Leonard spoke again. "If you're so offended, maybe you should leave." I looked at my dad, my sister, the few friends who came to support me. And I realized I wasn't going to let them win. "No," I said. "I'm not leaving. Not until you understand what you've done." Leonard opened his mouth, but I cut him off. "You act like my mom was some overbearing busybody. But she didn't do those things for recognition. She did them because she cared. And now you're turning her into some punchline? That's not just disrespectful, it's disgusting." The room fell completely silent. Leonard looked stunned. Beatrix opened her mouth but said nothing. Fidilia sat frozen, eyes fixed on the table. Leonard finally muttered, "We didn't mean it like that." "It doesn't matter how you meant it," I replied. "It matters how it came across. You don't get to rewrite who my mom was just because it fits your narrative. She deserved better than that." And honestly, So do I. I grabbed my coat. You want me to leave? Fine. But don't expect me to come back. My dad stood up right behind me. My sister followed, giving Beatrix one last glare. A few of my friends also rose, uncertain but supportive. Michael, wait. Fidilia called out. But I didn't stop. I walked out with my head high, even though my heart was pounding. Outside, my dad put a hand on my shoulder. You did the right thing, he said. Your mom would be proud. I nodded, but I didn't feel proud. I felt hurt, betrayed, and I realized something. If Fidilia couldn't stand up for me or my mother, maybe she wasn't who I thought she was. Part of me believed I did the right thing by walking away. But another part of me knew it wasn't enough. I turned to my father and said, I need to go back in there. What? My sister cried out. You don't owe them anything. I know, I replied, glancing at her. But I'm not leaving this unfinished. I need to make it clear, to Fidilia, her parents, everyone, that I'm done for good. My father hesitated, then nodded. If that's what you need to do, we'll back you up. No, I said, shaking my head. This is something I have to do on my own. My sister looked like she wanted to argue, but stayed quiet. I turned and headed back toward the restaurant. My stomach was in knots, but my mind was clear. I wasn't going back to cause a scene. I was going back to end things once and for all. People were chatting quietly and stealing glances at the door as I stepped back inside. Fidilia was still at the table, her face pale and her eyes wide. When she saw me, she stood up quickly. Michael, she said, what are you doing? I ignored her question and walked straight to the front of the room, where Leonard and Beatatrix still sat, looking far too smug. Leonard raised an eyebrow. He hadn't expected me to come back. Beatatrix gave me that same fake smile she'd been wearing all night. Back so soon? Leonard asked, his voice filled with disdain. I didn't answer him. Instead, I turned to face the room. Excuse me, everyone, I said, loud enough for the entire room to hear. The whispering stopped immediately. All eyes were on me. My heart pounded in my chest, but my voice stayed calm. I have something I need to say. Fidilia stood frozen by the table, her hands clasped tightly in front of her. I know this isn't the time or place anyone expected for this, I continued. But after what's happened tonight, I don't see any reason to wait. I took a deep breath. This wedding is off. Gasps filled the room. People turned to one another, some stood, others just stared. Fidelia's jaw dropped and her hands flew to her mouth. No, Michael, she whispered. I raised my hand, stopping her from saying more. This isn't just about tonight, I said. This is about the kind of family I'd be marrying into. A family that doesn't respect me, doesn't respect my mom, and doesn't respect the values I was raised with. I can't, and I won't, spend the rest of my life being treated like this. Leonard finally spoke. You're making a big mistake, kid. You're throwing away a good thing over nothing. I laughed bitterly. Nothing? You think disrespecting my mom is nothing? You think treating me like I'm beneath you is nothing? No, Leonard, the mistake would have been going through with this wedding and tying myself to a family that never deserved me. Beatatrix looked like she was either going to cry or faint, maybe just embarrassed that their little show had failed. Michael, she began, her voice trembling, let's not make decisions in the heat of the moment. We can talk tomorrow. No, I interrupted firmly. We're not talking tomorrow or ever. This is done. I turned to Fidilia one last time. Her face was streaked with tears. She looked like she didn't know whether to scream or beg. I walked toward the door, my footsteps echoing in the now silent room. Michael, please don't do this, she cried. I paused, my hand on the door, then turned back around and said, I already did. Walking out of that restaurant felt like ripping off a bandage. It stung, but more than anything, I felt relief. It was over. The wedding, the disrespect, the feeling of being second best. All of it, behind me. The next morning, I woke up to about 100 unread texts. Most were from Fidilia, some from Leonard and Beatatrix. A few were from cousins I barely knew. Fidelia's texts were full of apologies. I'm sorry, Michael. I didn't mean to hurt you. Please just talk to me. Leonard's were more aggressive. You embarrassed us in front of everyone. You'll regret this. And Beatatrix, of course, played the victim. I can't believe you'd do this to Fidilia. She didn't deserve it. I ignored them all. Later that afternoon, Fidilia showed up at my apartment. She looked awful, like she hadn't slept. Her eyes were red and her face puffy. She was still wearing the same clothes from the night before. Michael, she said softly, her voice cracking. Can we please talk? I crossed my arms and leaned against the doorframe. What's there to talk about, Fidilia? I made myself pretty clear last night. She flinched but didn't leave. I know you're angry, and you have every right to be. But we can fix this. We can work through it. You don't get it, I said, shaking my head. This isn't something we can just work through. She wiped her face. I was scared, okay? I didn't know what to do. Scared of what? I asked, the anger rising again. Scared of standing up to your parents? Scared of making a scene? She didn't answer, just stood there crying. Please, Michael, she whispered. We can make it work. I'll talk to them. I'll make them apologize. Just don't end it like this. It's not just about your parents, Fidilia, I said. It's about you. Last night showed me who you really are. And I can't unsee it. I deserve better. She looked at me for a long time. Her expression shifted as she realized I meant it. One Saturday, I was cleaning out my mom's old keepsake box. Inside was her favorite necklace, a pair of earrings she wore to church, and a delicate locket with a photo of my grandmother. That locket had been passed down for generations, from mother to daughter. Mom had given it to me before she died. One day, she said, you'll know the right person to give this to. But when I opened the box that day, the locket was gone. I tore the box apart, checked the drawers, the floor, nothing. Only one person had recently visited me, Fidilia. A few days after our breakup, she came over to return the engagement ring. She asked to use the restroom before leaving. I hadn't thought much of it. Until now. I texted her. Did you take the locket from my mom's keepsake box? She replied. What are you talking about? You know what I'm talking about. The locket. It's gone. You were the only one here. She didn't answer right away. Then finally. I borrowed it. I just wanted to feel close to you. I was going to give it back. Borrowed. Without asking. Without telling me. I called her. It's not a big deal, she said defensively. I just wanted something to remember you by. Not a big deal? I snapped. That locket has been in my family for generations. You don't get to just take it. I didn't think you'd notice, she whispered. Of course I noticed. I shouted. Where is it? At my parents' house, she said, crying. I didn't want to lose it. That was it. The final straw. An hour later, I was at Leonard and Beatatrix's house. Beatatrix opened the door and the smile vanished from her face when she saw me. I'm here for the locket, I said. Fidilia told me it's here. She let me in. A few minutes later, Fidilia came down, holding it between her fingers like it meant nothing. Here, she said quietly. I grabbed it, checked to make sure it was the same one, and put it in my pocket. Wait, she said, her voice desperate. I didn't mean to upset you. I was trying to save it. Save it? I snapped. You stole it. After everything you've already done. She broke down again, but I didn't stay to comfort her. I walked out and slammed the door. In the days that followed, I blocked her number, deleted her texts, and cut off all contact. Calling off the wedding had been painful, but this sealed it. I had stood up for myself, my mother, and everything she taught me. And for the first time in a long time, I felt calm.